the oil and gas industry? That's a very good question to answer. But I would say I was born into the oil and gas industry because my father used to work with Shell. My earliest memory of visiting an oil and gas installation was in Chennai. When I was 5 years old, he took me to his office once, and I took a walk around. I saw these huge petroleum tanks, and being a small kid at 5 years, and look at these tanks, it's huge. And I had a lot of questions to ask. Quite curious to see these huge pipes. So as a 5-year-old, I've actually made my entry into the oil and gas industry, and it's been there for many years till he retired. And for many years we stayed within the company accommodation at the various locations. So used to the smells of various products, whether it's diesel or motor spirit or naphtha, whatever kind of fuel. So those smells, even now, I still have a memory of those smells. And then when I grew up, graduated in engineering, and then my first project in the Middle East was the one which was in the oil and gas industry, having worked with one of the biggest companies in Saudi Arabia. It was a polypropylene plant. So being a civil engineer, I got straight away into the construction side, and I was fortunate to be engaged in a polypropylene plant construction. It was a huge plant, and to me also it was a kind of a big change in my life on the way that I looked at construction, and particularly when it comes to the safety aspects. Oil and gas industry, because of the operational side, putting out a higher demand on safety, even at the construction stage itself, safety was held at a very high premium. So it was a good exposure to safety in the oil and gas industry, the construction itself. So that's just a brief, and then about the early days, and then for about 20 years I worked in the Middle East with different companies, mainly in the oil and gas sector, onshore and offshore. Did projects for ADNOC, Khatri, Zadco, ADNOC, ADCO. So been through the desert, seen cross-country pipelines, did work with that, set up accommodation for new projects in those regions. Did some work for offshore platforms. Some work we had to do on Zakum, one of the main platforms of Zadco. It was quite a challenge. One of the first things that I learned was that you had this platform manager who said, your company is one of the best in the field in this area of business, that is welding and fabrication. But for us, that's not the important thing. We want companies who would have safety at its highest. For me, a day's production cannot be shut down because of a safety incident. So that's where my appreciation of safety also started really going up because of the oil and gas offshore exposure. So then we come back to India, and I came back to India in the year 2012, and again currently work with Tata Consulting Engineers. And we also are engaged in the oil and gas industry, like we do work for Bharat Petroleum shutdown jobs. We have done, going to start soon a work at the Bharat Petroleum refinery in Kochi, where we'll be doing a power plant. We also work with Shell now. We are setting up retail plants for retail filling stations for Shell in several locations. And we are the EPCM, as they would call it. So the touch with the oil and gas industry is always there. Plus, currently we offer a service known as human safety audit, which is also taking us to some of these kind of places where construction of oil and gas related plants are happening. So that's in short what is my connections with oil and gas, and where I started and where I stand now. It is very basic human nature to take risks. Taking risk is part of the DNA of every human being, and the risk-taking element is so evident in everything that we do. So in the oil and gas industry, the difference is there's a limit to which the risk can be taken. Because if you cross the Lakshman Rekha, there's a likelihood of even a major disaster occurring. And therefore, at-risk behavior has to be managed. So you need to have processes which would ensure that at-risk behavior is brought under control. Now, with technology moving fast, the understanding also has to increase. So you find oil and gas companies invest a lot in having newer methods of identifying risk at the design stage itself, eliminate it, and of course there's a certain element of human factors which come in, because that's not something which can be eliminated. Probably with Industry 4.0, the human element will be taken care of up to a certain extent, but still you still have to have human beings involved in many of these things. Like nowadays you have for example, you take a simple thing like a server room, which is very common. Now, a server room is the nerve center of the entire organization of an operating plant. It should be protected from all kinds of hazards. Which is the biggest hazard over there? It's usually a fire. Recently, last week, 10 days back, there was one of the IT companies in Mumbai had their server room catching fire. So we can imagine what havoc it has caused in the organization. That is just an office, but imagine a server room where you have housed all the computers and all. It's a nerve center. A fire happens there, it can be disastrous, especially when it comes to oil and gas operating platforms or onshore installations. So there has to be a good understanding of what are the risks, what are basically the hazards and the risks, and link it up with human behavior. A lot of efforts go into training people, because people have different levels of understanding of safety. And as I said earlier, the at-risk behavior varies from individual to individual. And young blood always is willing to take the risk. But as you get older, your risk perceptions change and your risk-taking abilities also change. Therefore, there has to be a holistic approach. Understand the physical conditions, understand the behavior of the person, and then make an approach that takes care of all these things, understanding the ethnic background also of that particular people group. I think that should help out in keeping the risk levels at a very low level. Developing a safety culture has a direct relation to the commitment levels of individuals. Now, how do you develop a safety culture? The first thing I personally believe and I always vouch for is that you have to have a concern for your fellow human being. Safety of human beings is the first thing that has to come. Property always comes second, because property can be replaced, but a human being cannot be replaced. That's the fundamental basis on which I am a safety practitioner. So for me, human life is sacred. It needs to be protected, and that is where it gets into the commitment also comes in. Today, human beings are intelligent. They know exactly what they are doing, and but then when it comes to safety, we might do foolish things. Supposing you're driving around a corner, the speed limit is put up at 40 km speed, but you say, no, I don't have a problem, I've got a new car, the road is empty, and there you go, you take off at a high speed. And it was a couple of months ago, we did read in the newspaper about how a guy drove a new car at more than 100 km speed, and he got headed onto a ramp in Hyderabad, and just as he hit the turn, he just flipped over and fell onto the road below, killing a bystander over there. And it was a curve where it's very clear you cannot go more than 30 kilometers. So he did not look at it as part of his culture to follow the rules. But following the rules is very, very important to develop a good safety culture. And when we look at in the Indian scene, our culture is not that of a culture of safety. We believe in a culture of, we are very fatal. It was not my problem, it was fate that decided it. In the Middle East, you go, you have a more culture. Again, there you blame fate, but you put it as, you throw it up saying, Inshallah, it was God's will that it happens. Whereas a Westerner has a more rational approach to the whole safety culture. So he looks at things in a rational way and he values human life more than anything else. So when you start working with the Western individuals, their approach to human life is very different. Whereas you work in the subcontinent part, it is a very different kind of approach where people are not even aware of safety requirements. And having worked in the Middle East, when it comes to safety culture, you have on one end you have the Westerners with a high appreciation, and on the other extreme you have people from the subcontinent who do not know about anything. And then in between you have the Middle Eastern culture is I don't care. So you need to marry all these three together to evolve a culture which balances the whole thing. At the same time, ensure that human lives are taken care of. But happily, in the oil and gas industry, the standards are set by the Western oil companies globally. So there is a very strong safety culture that happens. Now, how do you develop a good safety culture? All of us are very intelligent in the way we understand things. Our brains capturing a lot of information. But in our scenario, what happens, all that information stays only in the brain. But where is the commitment coming? The commitment comes from our heart. So that understanding, from understanding, you should start believing what is that understanding is the truth. And then from that believing, you have to get into that practice. And that practice is what we call as commitment. Understanding, believing, practice. I always use this as the UBP principle, and that is the biggest challenge a person has. From the brain to the heart is only about 12 inches in any human being, but that is the greatest distance a person has to travel in order to make a commitment. It's like I would say when a guy meets a girl or a girl meets a guy, they will the understanding is good, you like the girl or the guy, and then. But when does the commitment come down? It comes down, it takes some time. People say yes, they say sometimes yes, love at first sight, yes. But when you commit, you don't straight away say you commit yourself. It takes some time. That believing takes some time, and then that commitment. There is a time factor. Now it's the same thing with safety. The understanding to the actual practicing. That 12-inch distance is what we find very difficult to traverse. And over the years, I've seen some people have really changed in a very short period. Some people will not change. It's like the saying that you put the dog's tail in a pipe, it will never become straight, how much ever. Some people are like that. They do not want to change that culture towards safety. So culture and commitment have to be the underlying principle is that human life is precious. It is sacred. It has to be protected. Property comes in next. So, why manage safety? The moral, legal, and financial aspects do come in. So, moral has the precedence when it comes to safety culture. The oil industry has something unique. Probably almost all the activities pertaining to the oil industry, whether it is in the upstream or even the downstream, work happens 24 hours round the clock. Now when you work 24 hours round the clock and when you have human interface, one important factor is that you need to ensure that the fatigue aspect is really taken care of. So you need to have a very robust framework. You cannot lower the standards irrespective of where you are. An offshore platform works 24 hours, a refinery works 24 hours. Of course, it's not that the same person is going to work 24 hours, but you need to have planned breaks for them, planned outages of even the plant itself to ensure that the life of the plant is also elongated so that the integrity of the asset is also maintained for a longer period. So the basic framework should be robust with no leeway for any excuses or anybody making shortcuts. As I mentioned earlier, human life is very, very sacred. It is important that the rules laid down for working on a 24-hour operation is robust so that nobody gets hurt. Because if you have human lives being taken care of well, by default that person will work in a manner that the property doesn't get destroyed. And if the property doesn't get destroyed, the environment is also taken care of when it comes to oil and gas. Because a major fire or an explosion in an oil and gas setup has created enough of damage. So take care of the human being, have a framework for the 24 hours operations, the property will be taken care of, and finally the environment will also be taken care of. So have good framework, you will have good safety management systems in place. Industry 4.0 has come about in the world, and the oil and gas industry also cannot be insulated from it. And they need to be part of it, because the kind of activities that go on in the oil and gas industry, there's a huge potential for it. A lot of data gets generated. How do you manage that? A lot of automation happens. A lot of oil has to move from different locations. The sizes of refineries are going up. So in all these scenarios, 4.0 plays a huge role. But where does safety come in? Safety is again has to be the bedrock on which it has to be built. With more and more remote controlled activities happening, the safety has to be inbuilt into the remote controlled facilities that are being provided. Now, for example, we are providing drones to carry out pipeline surveys, or even inside complicated pipe networks. Now, if that drone is not controlled in a proper manner, it can crash, and that can even lead to a major fire incident. So are there enough of inbuilt checks and balances is to be first verified. It cannot be, 4.0 cannot be kept out, but we need to keep 4.0 in the right perspective, so that the growth of the industry will also happen actually. And robotics is also quite common these days. Human interface is reducing, but there has to be a method where the human interface will also have a kind of a double check whether the robot has actually done its job. Now we can use a robot to tighten up equipment, flanges and pipes and fittings, but has it done it completely is a question that needs to be verified. Pipeline integrity checks are done, asset integrity checks are done using remote control, because some of the facilities may be in remote areas and it's difficult for sometimes people to access it. So there 4.0 does have a play. And safety needs to look at it from that aspect, whether the effect of using a robot or any remote control measure will add to the hazards and increase the risk. So safety professionals should actually be consulted in this area before a 4.0 gets impacted on that particular business. Safety is actually a product of the oil and gas industry, because it's the oil and gas industry which actually drives safety. You go across the world in any country, it is always seen that the oil and gas industry which sets the standards and the others just follow. Maybe recently there's an improvement in that area. The others have also caught up with the oil and gas industry. So is the oil and gas industry doing enough for HSE? They're doing plenty. They're doing plenty of work in that area, and they're even setting a benchmark on which others have to follow. Now, if you're constructing even a petrochemical or a refinery or anything related, the standards that they demonstrate are the standards at which the actual plant operates. So there's no lowering of rules over there. Major companies around the world adopt the same practice, whether it's in the operating scenario or whether it's during the construction. Therefore, that has actually impacted the construction industry considerably, and the safety standards within the construction industry has really gone up. Contractors who deal with the oil and gas as well as the non-oil and gas sectors, practices that they have picked up from the oil and gas sector are now getting into the non-oil and gas sectors. So overall, it's a win-win situation for all. Standards Oil and gas again sets up new standards, the others keep following. So they are the leaders, whereas the others are the followers. So more can be done, yes, as new technology comes in, newer systems come in, newer equipment comes in, the safety levels keep increasing, and it's an open place. There's always scope for improvement. What was done 30 years ago is not done today. So it's the same. In fact, the time is coming lesser and lesser. So what was probably done 5 years back is not acceptable as a normal practice today. So the oil and gas invests also a lot of money into research in safety practices, so that the people and the assets are taken care of. So the rest of the others are also catching up with them. So I think the oil industry has set up a standard. The framework is good, and the framework is constantly being upgraded. Oil and gas is an industry where there is plenty of work available, and even as per current estimates, is not going to run out any time now. So that is a career. But how do you relate it to safety? Safety is not just a career, it has to be a passion. Unless you have a passion for safety, whether it is in the oil and gas or otherwise, you will not be successful. And safety is not something a degree that you possess and it rests. It is a practice. That's why we call safety as a practice, like a legal practice or a medical practice. And your knowledge base is not based on the qualifications that are achieved, but rather on your experience over the years. So safety as a career in the oil industry is always there. And you need to be a person who is willing to learn. Just like but particularly in safety, the level of textbook knowledge is not very high. But it being a practice, it is keeping your eyes and ears open to what is around you, reading what is happening around you, look at case studies which are happening elsewhere, and see it in your own environment what can actually be done. Universities do offer specialist courses in oil and gas safety, but that is just a basis on which you come out. But your career depends upon how well you are able to understand and assimilate. The basic requirement of any safety practitioner is to see what are the hazards. Are you able to identify hazards, and whether it is in the oil and gas industry or elsewhere. It's those hazards which opens up your mind, and what are the control measures that you can bring in so that there is no dangerous occurrence resulting from that hazard. So oil and gas is a good business, and safety is also a very good career that can be pursued in the oil and gas industry. Young people, there are plenty of opportunities available, but you should be willing to dirty your hands, spend a lot of time out in the field. It's not sitting in front of a computer and looking at or reading up something. Safety as a practice has to be out there in the field. It's no different in the oil and gas companies too. Looking back at my journey in the industry, as I said in the beginning, I first got introduced to the oil and gas at the age of 5. But the professional career started after I graduated from university, having a degree in civil engineering, and when I moved to the Middle East. Now, if I look back, I would say I feel quite happy because I've learned a lot of things which is specific to the oil and gas community. And I've also contributed to the development of the community in various ways, having been handled many of projects which are related to the oil and gas. And at the bottom of it, I've been able to ensure people go back home safe. Being part of the safety teams at various locations, helping people to understand what are the hazards and why they are doing what they are doing. Because sometimes when you deal with subcontinent workers, they do not know. So it needs a lot of coaching, coaxing for them to do things in the right manner. And that has I look back with a sense of pride that there are people who come back and tell me, "Sir, what you told me at that day, I still remember. If it weren't for you, I might even have got injured." So those are things which really make you feel very comfortable in hearing about it. And now probably I reached a stage in after spending more than 30 years in working, maybe I will slowly, like the sunset slowly going out into the horizon. But still, safety being a passion which I have, I would still continue to be a practitioner. Wherever there are opportunities, would be willing to guide people, help them to understand the fundamentals of safety, to ensure that your lives are protected. Not only your own lives, that you protect the lives of others. You will not create a situation where another person can get injured, or he can be exposed to an occupational hazard, or he can be even exposed to some chemicals, because these are the areas which actually impact human lives. So it has been a very good journey. Circumstances may not have been good all the time, but life journey has always been good. Varying circumstances, varying challenges, stood up to it. Remember the first time I was going offshore, I needed to undergo a helicopter underwater escape training. I was really afraid of the water because when I was much in my younger days, I had drowned in a river. So water was not something which I was very, very fond of. But then if I had to work offshore or visit a platform, I needed to do the seabed training, and as the prototype where you sit and when it goes into the water, you kind of, your heart literally leapt, because and then you're asked to step out of it and you're allowed to float. It was a different kind of experience. But then I had to do it, so that was probably one of the moments which I really remember very vividly as being a challenge to be able to go through those tests and come out so that I would be able to travel offshore and visit our projects too. So I think the gas industry has taught me a lot of lessons, traveling on a helicopter very frequently. I was amused to see that these helicopters, especially the Abu Dhabi onshore, where you have a lot of offshore areas where you have a lot of these rigs. It's more like a taxi service or an auto service, picking up stuff from one platform or a rig and dropping it. Either it can be people or it can be material. So it was very interesting to watch that happening while standing there. And I said, this is more like a taxi or an auto service which you find on the land areas. So oil and gas industry has taught me, and I've also contributed. I'm still continuing to learn, and I would still. My only hope is that I'll still continue to contribute to safety in the oil and gas as well as the associated industries, more into the constructional aspects, maintenance aspects as well.